2019 council meeting to order. Tonight we have some special guests. We have Cub Scout Pack 3514. These are 3rd to 5th graders, scouts from the Sidney Finn Elementary School, and Sean Campbell is the Cub Master. I'd ask the Cub Scouts to approach the microphone to lead us into the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Great job. More questions will come later. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Lamb.
Here.
Rose.
Here.
Shields.
Here.
Simpson.
Here.
Starcher.
Here.
Coin.
Here.
Heffinger.
here.
Reading of the minutes.
Mr. President,
Mr. Shields.
I move that the minutes of the regular meeting of January 28, 2019 is prepared and submitted by the clerk be approved.
Second.
Discussion on the approval of the minutes. Will the clerk please call the roll on the approval of the minutes?
Rose.
Yes.
Shields.
Yes.
Simpson.
Yes.
Starcher.
Yes.
Coin.
Yes.
Heffinger.
Yes.
Lamb.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Reports of standing committees. Finance Committee met prior to the council meeting this evening. Have discussed a few items, not as many as normal, but we'll meet again in 2 weeks prior to our next council meeting. Health, Safety, and Sanitation Committee, Mr. Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have nothing to report tonight, but we do have a meeting scheduled at just prior to our next finance meeting, which will be on the 25th of this month downstairs in the multipurpose room. Thank you.
Thank you. Public Properties, Mr. Shields.
Thank you, Mr. President. Public Properties met last week. We had one item on the agenda where we reviewed the master plan of the Park District. We did not take any action because with the new director of the parks, we were going to wait and see if some of the master plan is updated a little bit before we take any action, or we might just take action based on each project that the Park District decides on for Lake Medina, but no other report and no meeting scheduled.
Thank you. Special legislation, Mr. Lamb.
Thank you, Mr. President. Nothing to report, no meeting scheduled, but my expectation is that we will have probably sometime late in March the special legislation meeting on the equality legislation.
Thank you. Streets and Sidewalks, Mr. Heffinger.
Thank you, Mr. President. We had a meeting on February 5th where we discussed 4 different topics, 2 of which the flashing crosswalks and the sidewalk repair program update we decided not to go forward with at this time. But 2 other programs we did not take direct action in at the time, but we will be continuing with, and that is streetlights on Reagan Parkway. At this time, we decided to delay until we had further information. Sorry, my microphone's not on. Further information on the construction that will be happening there with the bike path. And then we are starting to move forward with the South Broadway reconstruction. And this week, we should be sending out letters to the residents of South Broadway Street, giving them a time and date to come and discuss with us the construction project that we are planning out.
Yes, that's correct. And it's going to be a council of the whole meeting with respect to the South Broadway residents. So it'll probably be in a couple of weeks to try to make sure we can get a lot of attendance. Anything else?
That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Starcher, Water and Utilities.
Thank you, Mr. President. We also had a meeting, the committee on February 5th. We discussed bulk water rates by the city. It was forwarded to Council for Changes, or to Finance today for changes, and it will be on the agenda soon.
Thank you. And Emerging Technologies, Mr. Rose.
Thank you, Mr. President. No meeting scheduled and nothing to report.
Thank you. Requests for council action. We have several for the Finance Committee. We have 1931, a then and now payment to Civica CMI Municipal Court. 1932, a then and now for the payment of Huntington Bank Municipal Court. 1933, elected official salaries. 1934, letter of arrangement with Auditor of State. 1935, increased expenditure for Goodyear Tire and Rubber Sanitation. And 1936, expenditure over $15,000 for HSH construction for the streets. Reports of municipal officers. Mayor Hanwell.
Thank you, Mr. President. As the council is aware, the Martin Luther King service was postponed in January due to the inclement weather that was on the original scheduled date. That has now been rescheduled for Sunday, February 17th, which is the Sunday before President's Day holiday, and it's at 4 p.m. and it's at Medina Presbyterian Church, which is 5020 Burgundy Bay Boulevard, and the public is invited. This program is organized by the Medina Ministerial Association. The annual 4 chaplain service was held at Medina United Methodist Church last Thursday, February 7th at 7 p.m. I attended the service along with Council at Large Paul Rose and Councilman Denny Simpson, and I'd like to thank the American Legion Commander Dave Taylor for organizing, promoting this event. Then the following day, Friday, February 8th at 9 a.m., the Aramaco Young Songwriters Program was held at Garfield Elementary School. And this was a program where 5th graders wrote their own lyrics and accompanying music and then performed the songs that they had written. I attended along with Council at Large Paul Rose and Councilman Bob Starcher. And I'd like to thank Tom Siegel for his efforts to continue to provide this program to our local youth. The program was funded by the Stevenson Foundation, of which Councilman Shields and I are both on the board. The Medina Ice Festival will take place in our community starting this Friday, February 15th, and run through President's Day, Monday, February 18th. And I'd like to thank the sponsors and Elegant Ice for bringing this great event to Medina each February. It's a great draw to our community and helps support our local businesses. And last but not least, the bicentennial banners that are posted along our streets and right outside of City Hall here, as soon as the weather's conducive and we're not plowing, will be removed and replaced with new banners recognizing Medina's selection as the best hometown by Ohio Magazine. And I'd like to thank the Bicentennial Committee for the design and the purchase of these new banners, which we'll keep up for the rest of this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Durham, Director of Finance.
Thanks, Mr. President. I'd like to remind residents that all residents are required to file a city income tax return with RITA. Forms are available here at City Hall and also online. Other than that, there are several items on the agenda that originated with finance that I will discuss when we get there.
Thank you. Mr. Huber, Law Director.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have no report.
Thank you. Chief Kinney, Police Department.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have no report.
Thank you. Mrs. Marshall, Economic Development Director.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just one item to note for council and the public. This Friday, February 15th, we have a ribbon cutting for the Queen Bee's Closet, which will be held at 3 p.m., 101 Public Square. And again, these are in conjunction with Main Street Medina and the Medina Chamber of Commerce. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mendel, Planning and Community Development Director.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have no report this evening.
Thank you. Chief Painter, Fire Chief.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have no report.
Thank you. Mr. Wright, Recreation Center Director.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just two quick updates. This week on Thursday, February 14th, the Rec will be spending Valentine's Day with Jonathan Mandel and the Planning Commission as they will be reviewing the Medina Rec's new fitness room addition. The meeting will be here at City Hall in the multipurpose room at 6 p.m. And then the next Rec Advisory Board meeting will be Thursday, February 21st at 7:30 a.m. at the Rec Center. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Worley, Parks and Recreation Director.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just one note. The Forestry Department issued a work permit for Ohio Edison Company to perform utility vegetation management all along 4 distribution circuits on the southwest side of town. Residents whose properties will be affected by this cyclic maintenance cycle will receive a door hanger from Asplin Tree Expert Company. And should they have any questions regarding the project, they should contact the phone number on the door hanger to receive further information. Most of the work will be performed in the right-of-way. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gladys, Building Official.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do not have a report at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Patton, City Engineer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Wanted the public to know that our Medina City Hall parking garage, that project, we are currently out with our request for proposals to the 3 design build firms. Those cost and technical proposals are due back to us in early March. And also last week we began the advertising for bidding for West Smith Road Phase 3, the project to replace West Smith between Commerce and Lake Road. Those bids will be open on February 22nd. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bacoli, Service Director.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have no report this evening.
Nothing about the snow?
No, we're handling it. Thank you.
Okay. Notices, communications, and petitions. We have one, a liquor permit, not to object to a new D1 permit to J&J Restaurant Enterprises LLC, doing business as Original Steaks and Hoagies at 947 North Court Street.
Move not to object.
Second, not to object.
Any discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Shields.
Yes.
Simpson.
Yes.
Archer.
Yes.
Coin.
Yes.
Heffinger.
Yes.
Lamb.
Yes.
Rose.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Unfinished business, we have none. Introduction of visitors. Members of the public will be permitted the opportunity to speak on any issue or concern which pertains to the city during the portion of the council agenda devoted to introduction of visitors. All comments shall be directed to the chair, and a reasonable time limit of approximately 5 minutes will be imposed. If there is a group, please appoint a spokesperson. Speakers should approach the front right microphone and state their name and address so it can be entered into the minutes. Members of the public will be afforded the opportunity to comment on other portions of the meeting as determined by the chair or by a vote of the majority of council members present. Is there anybody that wishes to address council at this time? Erica?
Thank you, Mr. President. Erica Graffine, representing the Auditor's Office. I have a couple of reminders tonight. The first is that the CAUV renewal, woodland and farming renewals were sent out, and they are due back into the office by Monday, March 4th. The second thing is just a couple of deadlines that passed, just in case somebody needs a reminder. Dog tags were to be renewed by January 31st, and the first half real estate taxes were due Friday the 8th. So they can call us if they have any questions. And then lastly, what's new and exciting in our office is we have a lot of our forms that are going to be electronically submitted now. And one of the first ones is the Board of Revision or the complaint form. That can now be submitted online as well as any supporting evidence. MedinaCountyAuditor.org.
That's exciting. No, it is. I
Thank you.
mean, it saves a lot of paper.
Yes.
Any other questions? Nope. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else that wishes to address council at this time? Introduction and consider.
No.
Oh, wait. Ooh, I'm sorry. Oh, sorry.
Sure. I'm here as part of the Cub Scouts. My name is Mike Bonus. I live on 168 Glenshire Lane. Just a question regarding a traffic sign or a lack of traffic sign. I don't know if that's eligible for a question or not to Mr. Heffinger. On the corner of, and I'm going off South Elmwood and Liberty Street here, just around the corner here, right? Where you're turning left and turning right, you have both traffics coming into the same intersection at the same time. I'm sure everybody's been through that intersection. It's right around the corner, right? I don't know how many times I'm coming home from work and I come through that intersection only to turn right towards Miss Molly's Tea Shop and the VFW hall there, and people turn left all the time at the same time, right? So I asked the driver instructor when I was getting air the one day, I said, is it left-hand yield or right-hand yield, right? So it's always a left-hand yield into a turn. So even if there's no stop sign, it's a left-hand turn yield. And nobody yields, or at least some people don't. So it's an accident area. So I don't know if anybody's ever brought up an opportunity to put up a sign or something that said, remember, left turn is to yield.
But I think you're talking Elmwood and Washington. Yeah.
That's where the one-way liberty
Yeah,
goes
I got-
into the two-way liberty.
Oh, I
That's
got you,
correct.
I got you.
I got it, John.
Mr. Mayor.
That's correct.
Mayor's got it.
I got it.
Okay.
So, sir, in most intersections, you're correct that the person turning left does have to yield, except in this case, where you're turning from a one-way onto a one-way, the left hand has the right to the left lane.
Really?
Your turning right has the right to the right lane. Both of you can turn simultaneously under Ohio law,
Really?
and then that's why you'll see we have the dashed lines showing into there.
Right.
And then when you get down in the block, if you need to get in the left turn lane, you have to yield to the ones on the left. If they need to get in your lane, they have to yield to you. But those turns can handle simultaneously because of the way that intersection is designed, and it's the only one that we have similar to that.
I understand.
Yes,
that.
sir.
So it is not a left-hand yield.
Correct. It would be a left-hand yield if they're trying to go right from coming at you into the right lane. Then they would have to yield. So you have the right of way in the right curb lane, they have the right of way in the left curb lane. And then you merge mid-block if necessary.
Good to know.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Or you just wait and make play safe.
That's what I do.
Anybody else that wishes to address council at this time? Okay, introduction and consideration of ordinances and resolutions. Ordinance 2219, an ordinance approving and accepting the Kensington Point subdivision final plat known as being whole of Medina City lots 8240 and 8827, and known as being the whole of Medina City lot 8896, and creating new Medina City lots 9239 through 9266.
Move to approve.
Second?
Discussion? Mr. Mendel?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. This is a ordinance for the City Council to accept a final plat of subdivision for Kensington Point subdivision replat number 2. The developers of this subdivision is actually the Kensington Point Homeowners Association for this neighborhood, and they are requesting this subdivision to subdivide some land that would be then transferred to the adjacent existing single-family resident lot that's adjacent to the lots being created. So on November 8th, 2018, the Planning Commission did review and approve the preliminary plan for the subdivision and recommended the final plat. This did then go to the Finance Committee for review and is now in front of the City Council for ordinance review. There is no development plan or development agreement required as part of this final plat of subdivision, as no public rights-of-way or easements are being established. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion or comment? Will the clerk please call the roll on the adoption of the ordinance?
Simpson.
Yes.
Starcher.
Yes.
Coin.
Yes.
Heffinger.
Yes.
Lamb.
Yes.
Rose.
Yes.
Shields.
Yes.
Ordinance 22-19 passes 7-0.
Ordinance 2319, an ordinance authorizing expenditure to Zerker Technologies for the subscription and maintenance expenses for the police dispatch and record system for the police department.
Move to approve.
Second?
Discussion. Chief Kinney.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is our Zerker Technologies. It's our maintenance contract for our records management system in the police department.
Thank you. Any further discussion or comment? Will the clerk please call the roll on the adoption of the ordinance?
Starcher.
Yes.
Coin.
Yes.
Heffinger.
Yes.
Lamb.
Yes.
Rose.
Yes.
Shields.
Yes.
Simpson.
Yes.
Ordinance 23-19 passes 7-0.
Ordinance 2419, ordinance authorizing the mayor to advertise for competitive bids and to award a contract to the successful bidder to seal city-owned abandoned water wells.
Move to approve.
Second?
Discussion. Mr. Pacoli.
Thank you, Mr. President. So at the water plant, the city has abandoned water well filled with 4 unsealed abandoned production wells, and we also have an unsealed abandoned test well. A site visit from the EPA and in a subsequent meeting shortly thereafter, it was determined that the city needs to plug and seal these wells. As such, this ordinance will authorize the bid process and award for the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion or comment? Will the clerk please call the roll on the adoption of the ordinance?
Coin.
Yes.
Heffinger.
Yes.
Lamb.
Yes.
Rose.
Yes.
Shields.
Yes.
Simpson.
Yes.
Starcher.
Yes.
Ordinance 24-19 passes 7-0.
Resolution 2519, a resolution requesting the Medina County Auditor to certify the total current tax valuation and the dollar amount of revenue that would be generated for the renewal of a 2.2 mills and an increase of a 1 mill for the operation of an ambulance and emergency medical services.
Move to approve.
Second?
Discussion, Mr. Durham.
Thank you, Mr. President. The city pays for our share of the life support team through this property tax levy. It passed at the current millage in 1999, which is now 20 years ago. We are actually collecting today less than we were collecting initially on this levy due to the state's phase out of personal property tax. At this time, and for several years, we have been running at a deficit in this fund. Prior to that, we built up a substantial surplus, so we've been able to cover those deficits, but over the next 5 years, we'll not be able to do that. Therefore, this is the first step in the process to ask the voters for an increase on this levy. We are asking for a renewal and increase because the state has phased out their subsidy of property taxes. They will keep doing it on renewals. They won't do it on a new levy. So if we did the whole thing as a new levy, we'd lose that. So we don't want to do that. That's why we're asking specifically for a renewal and increase. This is the first step of that process. We have to ask the county auditor to certify the amounts, and then we'll move forward from there.
Thank you, and I think that you with Jared put together a program that's going to discuss this. Do you know when that's going to start airing?
Well, I believe we're going to wait until council votes to put it on the ballot, because that'll be after we get this certification back from the county auditor. This ordinance is requesting the county auditor to give us that certification. Then we get it back. Council will place it on the ballot, and then we'll put that on. And I think at the meeting when we put it on, we'll probably run that.
And I think we'll run it, I mean, it's a long time before the elections, because we're talking it's going to be on November's ballot.
Correct.
So it'll be on and off. It gives the public an opportunity to review it and ask questions if they need to ask questions. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Any further discussion or comment on the resolution? Will the clerk please call the roll on the adoption of the resolution?
Heffinger.
Yes.
Lamb.
Yes.
Rose.
Yes.
Shields.
Yes.
Simpson.
Yes.
Starcher.
Yes.
Coin.
Yes.
Resolution 25-19 passes 7-0.
Ordinance 2619, ordinance of the Council of the City of Medina, Ohio, certifying that when a municipal obligation was incurred, sums were lawfully appropriated into funds to satisfy the obligation, and sufficient sums currently exist to satisfy this obligation.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion?
Mr. President,
Mr. Shields?
the emergency clause has been requested. I move to add it this time.
My second includes the emergency clause.
Discussion on the emergency clause and the ordinance. Mr. Durham.
Thank you, Mr. President. The ordinance is to approve a expenditure that has already been incurred by the municipal court, and the emergency clause is requested because the vendor would like to be paid.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the emergency clause and or the ordinance? Will the clerk please call the roll on adoption of the emergency clause?
Rose.
Yes.
Shields.
Yes.
Simpson.
Yes.
Starcher.
Yes.
Coin.
Yes.
Heffinger.
Yes.
Lamb.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Will the clerk please call the roll on the adoption of the ordinance?
Lamb.
Yes.
Rose.
Yes.
Shields.
Yes.
Simpson.
Yes.
Starcher.
Yes.
Coin.
Yes.
Heffinger.
Yes.
Ordinance 26-19 passes 7-0.
Ordinance 2719, ordinance of the Council of the City of Medina, Ohio, certifying that when a municipal obligation was incurred, sums were lawfully appropriated into funds to satisfy this obligation, and sufficient funds currently exist to satisfy this obligation.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion?
Mr. President,
Mr. Shields?
the emergency clause has been requested. I move to add it this time.
My second includes the emergency clause.
Discussion on emergency clause and ordinance. Mr. Durham.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is the same as the previous ordinance. It's also for the municipal court, and again, the emergency clause is because the vendor would like to be paid.
Thank you. Any further discussion or comment? Will the clerk please call the roll on the adoption of the emergency clause?
Simpson.
Yes.
Starcher.
Yes.
Coin.
Yes.
Heffinger.
Yes.
Lamb.
Yes.
Rose.
Yes.
Shields.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Will the clerk please call the roll on the adoption of the ordinance?
Shields.
Yes.
Simpson.
Yes.
Starcher.
Yes.
Coin.
Yes.
Heffinger.
Yes.
Lamb.
Yes.
Rose.
Yes.
Ordinance 27-19 passes 7-0.
Council comments.
Mr. President.
Mr. Simpson.
Thank you very much. This last couple weeks, we've been inundated with, I'm talking nationally now, which is still 2 years, or almost 2 years away, the next presidential election. And it's only going to get worse through the local and national media. The only thing I ask is people be respectful of each other's beliefs. Nobody's right and nobody's wrong, if you can just look at it that way. The other thing I'd like to bring up is the attention that the administration and the department heads has paid to our community as a whole in some of the inclement weather that we've encountered, and I'm sure it's not over yet, but I got to say again, as I've said every year, I'm just so proud to be part of this city that takes care of its citizens so much. The only other thing is try to be kind to one another. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other council comments? Mr. Lamb, anything?
Oh, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Denny, because it is a pretty I don't know, in a way ordinary thing what you talk about,
Right.
but it's one of those basic kind of things that would be nice if everybody just behaved that way.
Right.
Yeah, so it's always good to hear you say that. My comment is I have this area of the strategic plan to work on that is quality of life. And quality of life is a rather subjective area. You could sort of go anywhere with that. And so I started working on it a while back and decided that it would be helpful to get some help. And so I have been recruiting residents and stakeholders in the community to take a look at it and initially just to work out how do you evaluate, what methods do you use when you're looking at quality of life? How do you rate them? What falls into the category? And then secondary to that, which I thought would be important for the community, is to look at things that fall out of the area that's routinely or generally or hardly ever can be covered or taken care of by government. And there are things that government doesn't do that need to be done. And a lot of them kind of are food banks, donations for socks, or those things that we do as a community to kind of fill in the holes that people have that really do matter. And there are, if you look at the statistics, there are more people that fall into some of these need areas in a community that is so blessed and such a great place to live. But there are a lot of people that still fall into those holes. So I thought it would be a healthy thing to look at and really pretty exciting to try to do the methodology of evaluating quality of life and to work on that as a kind of a report back. And then second, to work on these issues that could be addressed if in fact you were thoughtful and focused and tried to figure out how do you fill that hole or meet that need. And one of them that I'm looking at to try to work at first, it sounds pretty basic and mundane and boring and who can't do this, but the truth is it is an issue, and it is laundry. It costs the average household, if you have to do your laundry at a laundromat, and when you consider what's involved in laundry, which isn't just your clothes, but it's sheets and all the other bed sheets and other things you have, the average is about $25 a week. So if you were going to try to help people that couldn't meet that, and you had 10 families, an average sized family, that'd be $250 a week. And it has an impact not only on adults, but it has a really big impact on children as well when you don't have the wherewithal to do that, to do laundry. And so those are the issues that I wanted to look at and see if there's a way to address them outside of government, but pertaining to the quality of life for everybody. And so I wanted to share that with you. I thought that was that would be a good thing to work on. It's exciting to me because quality of life is such a, like I said, subjective, but it really matters. Our quality of life, each one of us, when we think about it. And so I think it'll be an important, but like I said, exciting thing to work on. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else have any comments? Hearing none, the meeting is adjourned.